Hello, everyone. Welcome to
Hey.
Paranormal with Sandy and Erin. Hello, hello, hello.
I,
Okay, so we've got a pretty cool subject that we're talking about today. We were just sort of chatting a little bit behind the scenes, and it's exciting stuff. Like,
getting shivers.
I
This,
know.
this, this, oh, it's so cool. I
I
can't
just
explain
had
how cool it is.
goosebumps while I was telling you stuff. So yeah, it's pretty awesome. It's pretty awesome. So yeah, today we're going to be talking about just apparitions in general. We are making our way through the paranormal what do we call it? A dictionary.
Paranormality dictionary.
Paranormality. So I'm just going to pull that up quickly because obviously, I did my job and made sure that I had all the links ready, even though I was showing you everything. There was the one thing that oh God, I tell you, this is high quality viewing, guys. High quality viewing.
Give the
So I am
people what
now.
they want.
I know. We're just providing that high class content every day. All right, so let's have a look here. So we've got apparition. So that is what we're talking about today. So thanks to paranormality.com, we're using their alphabet of the paranormal. And today we are on the word apparition, which is a noun and it means a specter, a ghostly figure, or even a sudden or unusual sight. The term apparition is usually another name for ghost. So that is, yeah, that's what we are chatting about today. And what are your thoughts on that subject matter? Have you had experience with apparitions?
I've had a few. I think the most notable one would be so we moved to a new house when I was 10.
Yeah.
And so it was the first house we'd ever moved to, so it was a whole new experience. And we moved to a neighborhood that was quite populated with Italian immigrants,
Yeah.
so that comes in handy later. So
Okay.
my mom so like everybody in the neighborhood was like second generation Italian, or like their parents had, so like it was very so my mom had a theory, actually, based off a few different things, that there had been people that were in the mob that lived in our house before.
Oh.
And I was always like, that's racist. What are you talking about?
Oh.
But there was one spot in our house that was underneath, but it was a crawl space, but we couldn't get into it. It
Okay.
was just so our basement was all livable, and just off of the bathroom was actually a crawl space that you couldn't get into. It was bricked up.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And always gave us kind of like shivers, it
Yeah.
felt weird. And one night when I was in high school, I was getting really into like, you know, paranormal stuff and
Yeah.
spiritual stuff. And so I was quite open. And one night I was laying in bed and I woke up and somebody was standing next to my bed. And it was
Oh.
this man, he was see-through. He was like silvery, like a silvery see-through.
Yeah.
And he was in a three-piece suit. He had a fedora on. He was very old school, like 1950s, sort of mobster looking guy.
Wow.
And I just looked over at it, like I just turned my head and I looked up and I was like, all right. And I just like turned over and went back to sleep. But
Wow.
the thing that I remember the most that actually makes me think it was something that happened was that I felt a hand move from my shoulder down my back on top
Wow.
of the covers.
Wow.
And that was all. Like, it didn't give me a bad feeling. There was nothing. I just think he was like, yeah, this is, hey, how you going?
Yeah. Just that you're just this kid,
That I
That's
was open
amazing.
to it. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. My sister had a very scary experience with an apparition when we were kids. Just came to mind now hearing your story. And she says she was lying in our bedroom. So we had sort of beds on either side of the room and then the door at our feet, sort of on the right hand side.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And she said she was lying in bed the one night and the door was always open so that it wasn't too dark. So either the morning or the
Yeah.
night, but it was just like light enough to see. and she saw our mum come into the room wearing sort of a floral nightgown,
Mm-hmm.
as if she was bringing the Milo or something. You know, in the morning she'd bring a cup of Milo and say, "Time to wake up." And then this person that she thought was her mum came to the bed and leant over, and she realized that it wasn't mum, that it was another mum, but see-through, and just freaked out, like absolutely freaked out. And she's told me that so many times in our lifetime. So yeah, what I've done is I've just had a quick look at a paranormal page that I kind of always get notifications for, and I really enjoy what they post. People in South Africa love sharing their stories a little bit more freely than our Aussie friends. They really get out there and just share their stories. So this is from a South African paranormal page, but they are people living all over the world who originate in South Africa, and then they share their paranormal stories with each other. So this is our first story. So I'll read this one. Our current house is a little odd. Lights turn on, air conditioning turns on and off, TVs turn off randomly, noises that sound like people moving stuff, sounds like someone walking up the wooden stairs, shadows strolling past. Other than that, all is well. I was like,
That actually reminds me of that house. Like, we would have shadows that would kind of like, you know, when shadows move really quickly,
yeah.
like we'd have that, and you're like, what was that? Did I really just see that?
I know, it's scary. Like I know it's funny because we can become a little bit superstitious. And last night I was just awake at random times, and there was a car that drove past. We live in a quiet sort of crescent, and as they drove really quietly past, the lights sort of went across the ceiling through the tops of the curtain, and it like reminded me of times when I have seen those kinds of things where there were no external light sources. And I was just like, oh, it's amazing. But we can become so paranoid and a little bit weird. And that's where paranoid comes from. And one lady, she was saying that she was doing the washing the one day, and they had a lot of activity in their house. And she got the washing pile off the floor. And as she started to walk, her slippers that were behind her started walking after her. And she just lost the plot, screaming. Husband came up. It ended up being thread from one of the outfits in the washing pile had somehow hooked onto like the diamond sequins or whatever that were on the shoes. And then as she was walking, it was moving on her shoes and making the shoes walk behind. So she just absolutely lost the plot. And her husband was laughing at her and still teasing her to this day. So like there are, times when we can go, all right, there is an explainable reason why this is happening. So yeah,
look for that first.
Exactly. All right, so this is your turn.
I'll go this one. Okay. Especially this one old man. I used to scold him for waking me up. He woke me up by playing with the light switches. And then I would just talk to him to find out more. And then when I explained to him that he got trapped in the wrong house looking for his family, he then realized, and soon after he left.
Interesting. Very, very interesting. There were people saying in this chat that, you can talk to these apparitions. Obviously, look, if there's an entity in your house and it's making you scared and it's doing things to harm you, if there's things flying at you, if there's like electrical issues, fire, flooding, like ugly stuff, I would get help, speak to someone who knows what they're doing, maybe a pastor, maybe someone who deals with spirit stuff. Cool. Get that in, sage the place, put oil on your window frames and all mirrors, and just basically declare the place spirit free. But if it's a harmless spirit, you'll know, you'll still get a bit freaked out, but if it's a harmless spirit, you can talk to them. It's not easy for them to talk back. It takes a lot of energy for the other side to communicate. But you can explain to them that they can move on. You can tell them that, their family isn't here anymore and they can go. Sometimes they're just lost and trapped spirits. So let's go on to our next one. We did. Hubby doesn't believe in that stuff, and he became a believer. You could hear someone walking upstairs and then down the stairs. Our kettle would switch on periodically on its own. Our hi-fi would turn on full blast at 3 a.m. now and then. A picture frame I had that had a message recorded on it, you pushed a button to hear it, would just start. The kids
Hmm.
had a shower radio that just turned on. They took the batteries out and it still carried on playing. I was in
Oh,
my bedroom and I heard my daughter shout, "Mom!" I came out of the bedroom and she freaked out. She said she just saw as clear as day a woman going down the stairs and thought it was me.
that's like
That
your
gave me
sister.
goosebumps.
Me
Yeah,
too.
that kind of thing is so weird. I often hear about electrical things working without batteries for ages. You see, that's a thing with the spirit, with apparitions. It's electricity. We are electrical. Our heart
Hmm.
starts beating through an electrical impulse that keeps our heart beating. That's the only thing keeping us alive, guys, is that heart just beating and that electrical impulse, that synapse working every time. Um, when we die, there's no difference. We're just electrical energy. We're energy. We can affect electrical things. We have weird stuff happen in the house all the time, electrical stuff, and it can be a bit scary sometimes, just things on and off that shouldn't be. But it
Hmm.
is what it is. It's someone reaching out in some way. So what do you think about that?
Yeah. Woo. It reminded me again of that same house because my grandmother used to do the laundry in the basement,
Yeah.
and she used to hear people walking around upstairs all the time, and she told
Wow.
us, and we were like, okay, yeah,
Yeah.
grandma, whatever. But she
Yeah.
swore up and down, and she's not stupidly superstitious. We'll just say
Yeah.
that. She was from
Yeah.
the South, so of course she was superstitious. But
Yeah.
yeah.
And we lived in a house that was a semi-detached. So it was the exact same house, kind of flipped over and then joined along a passage wall. So the two passages ran alongside each
Oh.
other, and then the bedrooms on the outside. So it was under one roof, but two houses.
Mm-hmm.
And we wooden floors, and we would always hear people up and down, hear each other walking up and down, our grandparents on the one side, us on the other. But then sometimes when no one was home, you'd still hear someone walk down the passage to the point
Mm-hmm.
where it would even like jingle the stuff on the shelves, but there's no one there. And often hear
Oh.
someone doing the dishes, often, and go there and the dishes are there. So, you know, I
If
think
only they
spirits
actually did
do
the dish.
the actions. Yeah, they go through things that they enjoy doing in real life or
Mm-hmm.
following their processes. Sometimes I feel if there's a sudden death, that spirits don't always know they've passed. Sometimes they do, and they're really funny and cheeky about it, and they can be quite a good time. Some spirits are really angry that they've passed. Others are just doing their normal routine until they know any better.
Yeah. There's one story. I'll tell it
Yeah.
after this one.
Oh no, go for it, doll.
Oh, I was gonna say there's one story that I heard. There's a podcast I listened to called Spooked,
Yeah.
and it's people telling their own stories.
Yeah.
And this one story really touched me. It was a woman who moved into a house that she had felt connected to in her neighborhood her whole life. And
Yeah.
finally it came up for sale and she moved in. And she just knew, she was a mother and she just knew there were three children,
Mm,
spirit children in the house. And she
yeah.
would buy them Christmas presents. She would
Mm,
she would take them up to the attic and like she said she would know when they liked them because she like one time she gave she knew it was like an older boy, a younger girl, and then a baby.
yeah.
And she
Wow.
said she put a blanket down on the floor and she could see the blanket crinkling, like the baby was
Wow.
crawling on it. And she gave the
Yeah.
older boy a basketball and she said, "Do you like it?" And it bounced and hit her in the head. And
Wow.
and
Yeah. It's
it's very
amazing.
sweet. I think that's very sweet.
Yeah. And once again, how I always say in the show, you can't discredit someone's lived experience, no matter how
Mm-mm.
weird it might sound. You might say, ah, poo poo, it's just a load of crap, whatever. You can't discredit a person's lived experience. It holds true for them, as long as it's not causing them any physical, mental, emotional, spiritual harm. I think it's lovely. That person with those spirit children, it might be bringing her a lot of joy, to
Yeah.
see what she's seeing, and it would be so lovely to experience that with her. I know I've had so many experiences that cannot be explained, and I've had some people really, attack me over it. I actually have a paranormal blog, but I'm in the process of moving it across to my website as an extra page on the website. And I've kind of tried my best to write my experiences down when they've happened so that it's fresh with photographs, any audio that I've managed to capture, things like that, just to try and have a trail of my experiences available for anyone who wants to have a look. So let's have a look at this next one.
All right.
So
Bunbury,
is that
Western.
Bunbury? Yeah,
Yeah.
you're reading it.
Oh, I'm reading. All right.
Doing well.
Bunbury, Western Australia. Lived in our house 10 years. Had radios turn on in the day, and the sound would get louder and louder. Had my upper leg slapped hard one night and thought it was my husband, but he had his back to me. I have had my head stroked when dozing, but my husband was in the shower. Looked after my dad for 3 years. When we brought him over and he passed this year, a week to the day later, he was standing at the bottom of my bed about to lean over and touch my foot, but then disappeared. I think he was saying goodbye. He was young again and so handsome, but was without a doubt him.
So I
That's
haven't
so
edited
sweet.
these, so there's awesome grammar issues and stuff. I wanted them just as the people type them. But that's also another thing. People often see their deceased loved ones, come and say goodbye. And yeah, even that like slapping the thigh, that's a bit concerning, but like the stroking the hair, that's gentle. So maybe there are a number of spirits in that home, and this person is just susceptible and more open to it, and they are able to connect with that person.
Yeah.
Yeah, pretty interesting. I've just had so many freaky experiences where it's definitely not friendly and it's really quite nerve-wracking. In the house that we currently rent, our bedroom is shaped a little bit weirdly. So we have like a little bit of an entranceway with a door, and then an entranceway, and then the cupboards, and then the bedroom. So it sort of like goes like that. I can't tell you the number of nights my partner and I see someone standing in the entranceway looking at us, and we think it's one of the kids. We immediately like look and say, yeah, and there's no one there. But we both see the outline of the person looking at us from the shadowy area. We have mirrors, 2 mirrors in our room. And when we
Do
lie
they
in bed,
face each other?
yeah,
Sorry.
when we lie in bed and we look at the big mirror, we can see the little mirror, which is like this vintage old Gothic mirror behind, and you see faces in the mirror looking through, like peeking up, looking into the room.
Yeah, well, they say that you shouldn't have mirrors that face each other because it creates a portal.
God, no. So now
And
maybe
that's one of
throwing
the,
a blanket over
yeah,
that.
that's one of those things that actually they have in the Stanley Hotel, which is one of the most haunted places in
Oh,
America. Is
yeah.
like at one end of the hallway there'll be a mirror, and at the other end there's a mirror, and that's one of the theories as to why it's so haunted.
All right, Jasmine, if you're watching this, we need to
Move that mirror.
We gotta cover that mirror, babe, because that freaking freaks me out. And Jazz actually has had almost like an energy kind of follow her around the house. Like she felt this really like masculine energy to the point where she could even smell the cologne. And when she came through into our room, it got so oppressive. She actually said, "Leave me alone." Like she felt really uncomfortable. So yeah, in that case, it's not friendly at all. So yeah, and that's one. There's some entities in the house that switch on the Xbox and pause movies and play movies and stuff like that, but only when I'm watching a movie. But they have switched on and off the Xbox in front of other family members, and that's a little bit freaky as well. All right, so this is our next one. Now, this one actually made me feel like so weird. All right. I am a bit concerned in regards to my 2-year-old daughter. She knows nothing of this, and all of a sudden she keeps getting scared and then says, "Die oom, the uncle," and starts to cry. And she shows us where he is, which is usually in our passage and close to her room. I know some people believe that this is in your genes and can be passed on. But the weird part is this specific person I can't see, but I can feel the enormous presence and the magnetic feeling and sound in my ears as soon as I go to her when this happens. Now,
That's so upsetting.
So I mean that in that way, this mother is able to see in the spirit realm, but for some reason, this entity that is purposefully scaring her 2-year-old is hiding himself from her. And yet she can feel the energy, the electrical energy, the magnetic energy. That would piss me off. Like,
me too. I was getting angry just thinking about it.
I'm like, you can, if you're going to scare me, I'm a big girl. I can get scared and cry. Don't frighten my children. In that case, I feel that really is a malicious entity. That's not something friendly.
That makes me so mad.
Reasons. Yeah. Yeah. I know. I'm just like,
honestly, the whole mom thing, I'm just seriously, it's the way I feel. Do you ever like think about what you would do if somebody tried to hurt your kids? You're just like, I would kill that person.
You go mad.
Like,
you go mad. Like, you get feral.
Yeah.
Like, instantly feral.
Yeah.
Yeah, don't come at my kids. Don't threaten them. Don't make them feel sad or weird or anything. Yeah, it really, really upsets me. So I've got another thing here. I'm just going to make it full screen so I can share it as well. So I had an experience with a show that I wrote in 2015. 2014 was when the show went live. And I had written this show, and it was called Just Yours. And it was a love story based in the 1940s. And the theater that we did the show in was built on top of a Catalina airplane tower from the Second World War. So the theater was called the Catalina Theater. There was a lot of spirit activity in that space, a lot. And some of it not friendly, very scary and angry spirits, maybe young men that never made it back kind of thing, really angry. And so I wrote a love story of this young girl and this young serviceman, this airman, and his best friend and her aunt, who was the Scottish lounge singer at a local hotel. And the story was really beautiful. It was a good love story. I then found out from a friend of mine, and please forgive me if I get any facts wrong, Colleen, I'll do it as faithfully as I can remember. She came to me and she said, you know what, the story you've written is so similar to my parents' love story. It almost could be their love story. And I was like blown away by that. I was like, oh my, wow, that's amazing that, there's this link, and from the minute we started rehearsing, there were anomalies and apparitions and strange stuff going on. I was telling you, this guy's voice, the voice of her father, would come through the speaker system in the theater. We never had that happen. We'd just have our head, the head mics on, and we'd be doing our lines, and then we'd hear a man's voice, but he would sound like he was from the 40s, like a radio host from back in the day, blah, 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 like was just so
oh
weird.
My God.
Old time kind of voice patterns and everything. And then I was saying to you that we had the stage was set in 4 quadrants because we couldn't change scenes. There was no time. So we'd move from section to section to section depending on where we were in the storyline. And on the furniture, we had hidden little sort of memory joggers, little script memory joggers, just to remember the order of events, because it was quite complicated, the play. And they were stuck down with sellotape. And we'd be in a scene on the stage live in front of an audience doing the scene. We'd walk in front of the desk, walk back, and that thing would be gone. The script would not be on the table anymore. And if we then walked the other way, that script would be stuck on, say, the bar, or stuck on the wharf, or stuck on the cupboard. It would be moved physically and reapplied with sellotape in a second, live in front of an audience, and no one saw anything. And it was
insane.
Just naughty, just moving stuff around.
It is naughty.
So naughty. So I'm going to read the story here. And I've made it full bigger screen because there's photos that I want you guys to see as well. So this is a 1940s romantic comedy, Wakes a Family Ghost. In 2014, I wrote and directed a play based in 1943 at a 100-year-old theater. Sorry, I left out the thing. And unwittingly wrote an almost identical tale to a true love story that happened on that very spot 73 years earlier. I had the privilege of having some of the personal artifacts from this family on display in the foyer. And I think that kind of encouraged more activity as well.
Yeah.
During the run-up to the show, we had a number of strange things occur on and off stage. During rehearsals, we had a simple sound system set up with radio mics, and we would switch everything off, including switching the sound system off, and we would hear almost restaurant conversations, no clear words, but chatting, laughing, and socializing sounds predominantly of a male voice coming through the system. On our one prop, our desk, we had our script stuck down with press stick, and an A4 page meant to jog our memory during scenes. We walked on stage to perform our scene, and the script that was there a moment before was gone. The other two actors, the only other people there, were sitting on the far side of the stage in their scene, waiting to act. We stopped and asked them, and they didn't know what we were talking about. There weren't even marks on the table. We started the scene again and all walked forward to the front of the stage to act. When we turned, the page was stuck back on the desk in the same place as before. So this happened quite a number of times and differently in different times.
Oh, sorry. Is press stick the same as blue tack?
Blue tack, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
The gentleman in question had met the love of his life during the war, married her 68 years ago, and he had died at the age of 74. His wife never remarried. On the 7th of February that year, his dearly departed wife would have been 90 years old, and on the 11th of February, he would have been 100 years old. Two of their daughters, C and E, were able to attend the show, which was amazing. On the night that the daughter C, who supplied the artifacts, attended, she was sitting in the audience, and the man next to her kept shifting uncomfortably in his chair. He eventually apologized to C and said that he was moving as his chair was broken. We have never had another complaint about that chair. Very shortly afterwards, her husband started shifting and said the same, moving one chair away. C thought it was a little odd, but within 2 minutes she felt two distinct spirits arrive at her side, her mum and her dad. She says that they sat on either side of her and spent the show with her. On that same night, I was backstage alone, preparing to go on, when I suddenly saw what I thought was one of my actors walking out of the change rooms towards me. He stopped and fixed his brown army hat, checked his buttons on his army jacket, and then walked through the curtains on the audience side. I opened my mouth to ask what was going on, but realized in those few seconds that it couldn't have been my actors. They were only in army dress from halfway, that I could hear them on stage, and that the man in question had been shorter and slimmer. Oh, and the change room door was shut. It was at this time that C felt her dad sit down next to her. It has been almost a year since the event, and I was chatting with C this morning. I suddenly asked her if she had taken any photographs at the theater, and she said no. So I said, in the foyer, and the answer was yes. I felt really strongly that I should ask her to look at those photos, and I'm glad she did. She sent me the 2 photos and asked me to see if I could see what she saw. She didn't tell me what. In the first photograph, you will see the tank with the artifacts inside. So there's the tank. There is the father. There's the couple together. And over there, you can see the jaw, his distinct ear shape and head shape, his other ear, and the rest of his jaw with his mouth, nose, and eyes. And when you zoom in, it's very, very clear, and it's the same face shape as the photograph of him. In the second photo, you see C's sister E, who is blurred, and behind her in the glass window, you see handprints. But behind the handprints, we see their dad again, with his very distinctive nose, the same shape as C and E's noses, and he seems to have an army hat on as well. And I just want to note that we cleaned all the windows. There were no people putting their hands on the glass. So I'll zoom in here.
Oh, wow.
Can you see that's the forehead there, the chin, the hands up on the glass, the nose, and the eyes.
Oh, my
and
God.
there's an army hat shape there.
That's spectacular.
I'm just trying to see if I can Yeah, so that's the main photo there. You can kind of see him a bit more clearly there. There's the army, the long, that long narrow arm,
Yes.
and his jaw and his nose, and he's looking sort of down with the hand on the glass. Quite an amazing experience. That's a very unique nose. It's almost like a button nose that goes really straight, and both of his kids have that same nose. Very, very specific nose. Yeah, quite amazing. So that's that story. Um,
Wow.
just
Wow, wow,
yeah,
wow.
amazing. I haven't thought of it for a very long time. So dusting off a bit of the dust of the memory. But yeah, just I remember being in the wings and seeing him coming out from the change room, and I had spent months sewing the outfits and going to the the army base, the naval base, the air base, trying to source outfits that were as accurate as possible. I had to sew the army hats, the hats from the war, because that you couldn't buy them anymore, recreate all the badges. So I had a really intimate knowledge of what they were wearing at
Mm.
all of the dresses for my female lead were actually posted to me from Bondi in Australia. So we were in South Africa. A friend who collected vintage clothing heard, and it was, she came to South Africa for some reason and actually brought dresses over for us.
Wow.
Yeah, it was pretty amazing. So she came and delivered them. And so we had real vintage, authentic dresses for the show. But yeah, that was a bit intense, seeing him so clearly and
Yeah.
recognizing him. Yeah. To the point where I was
Yeah.
actually going to go moan at him and say, are you supposed to be on stage? Like, what's happening? Like I couldn't really, I was just so confused. It was so quick.
Like, what is happening?
Yeah, it's pretty intense. What have you had any other sort of apparition experiences?
I mean, I often see things out of the corner of my eyes. I often hear things, but I feel like I haven't had anything as clear as that one that I described before. Um, yeah. But I've had other experiences that are similar. I think auditory, is that something we'll talk about later?
Yeah, I mean, you can chat about it quickly.
Yeah.
It is a part of apparitions. It's anything out of the ordinary that you don't expect and that you hear or see or feel. Yeah.
Well, this one was really interesting. It was a friend of mine in high school actually committed suicide. And yeah, it was really rough. But the night, I think, that we all found out so they actually announced it over the loudspeaker in school, which was, I think,
Wow.
in retrospect, pretty poor experience.
Traumatic.
Yeah. So then that night I was quite upset, obviously, but I was in my room and everyone was asleep. And my parents' room was on the opposite side of the house to mine and my sister's. So we had like a shared bathroom in their house. Their room was on the other end of the house.
Yeah.
And I heard a male's voice calling my name. And I was like, I thought Dad was asleep. So I went out of my room and we had like a baby gate across the entryway to the kitchen because we kept a dog in there. And I got to the baby gate and I was like, what is it? Like, and that's how clear it was to me, was that I literally thought my dad was calling my name.
Yeah.
And I went and I was like, Dad, what do you want? And it was totally dark. The entire house was totally dark. Nobody was there. And I just kept hearing, Erin, like garbled. And I was like, what? I can't hear you. And then it happened like 3 times. Like happened once in my room and I opened my door and I was like, what? And then I heard it again and then I got to the kitchen and I said, what is it, Dad? And that, yeah, like I said, nobody was there and I heard it, but it was fainter every time, which is really consistent with spiritual activity because like you said, it takes a lot of energy for them to reach out.
Yeah.
And yeah, and I just have always felt like he was trying to tell me he was okay.
Yeah.
Because I felt so guilty, as a 17-year-old and it's a close friend of yours and it's like somebody I had kind of moved away from. a
Yeah.
bit, and like we kind of gone in our own separate directions, and I felt really guilty,
Yeah. Yeah,
and yeah,
that's amazing. I mean,
it was really
yeah.
impactful.
Yeah. And you know, in
Mm.
your heart, you know who you believe it was. And, you know, in that case, that is who it was. They were reaching out, you know.
Yeah.
Um, I think just very quickly, I think we've gone over by about 5 minutes, but I just remembered another very, very powerful apparition experience I had. Um, I had been house sitting my grandparents' house for a while they were overseas, and I there was a lot of activity there. That's the house with the dual passages, and there was just so much
Mm.
activity on their side. And while I was there, I kind of put my foot down and said, I don't really want anything happening in this house while I'm here. I need no spirit activity here. I just want quiet and peace. And there was peace while I was there. But then I went away for a few days and came back kind of unannounced, just sort of opened the door quietly, walked in with my bags because it was just me, shut the door, and then walked into my bedroom. And there was a man in my bedroom. And I've written about it and I've got a photo of him already there as well. And I saw him and I freaked, and he saw me and he freaked. We both got a huge fright, and then he disappeared, which then I screamed like it's so loud. I screamed so loud and I ran to my mum. She was next door. I ran. I just left the house open. I just ran because I was like, oh my God, what did I just see?
Oh
And
my
he
God.
had brown hair. He had sort of mutton chop sideburns. He had a white, like a shirt on with a popped collar. He had Oxford bags, the like very baggy 70s kind of pants that go down to the ground, like really
Whoa.
stunny, funky. And he was getting ready to go out. He was like, sorry, he was popping that collar. He was like gold rings. He was looking really cool. But when he saw me, he got such a shock that I was there. And he was looking in my mirror getting ready. And I was ready to kick his ass. I was like, you don't come in my house and get changed, son. And him vanishing kind of put dents in my beating up plans. And then when I ran next door to my mom, I was like, Mom, I can't believe this is what did you hear me screaming? She's like, no. And that house was like paper thin. Like you heard everything that happened, and I screamed. She didn't hear a thing. So something really weird happened there. And then she told me that the next door neighbors had told my gran that in the late 60s there were two men living in that house that had a questionable relationship, that they were possibly a couple, and they used to fight quite violently. And one night the fight was going on the whole night, and my neighbor used to tell, like she told my gran and my mom the story with big eyes, and she said they were fighting really, really rough and violently, and then it just stopped. And the next morning, all the houses were sort of in a row in a valley. So, and there were no walls. All the kids played together. There was like little low fences. So she went out to hang her washing or whatever it was, and she looked over, and this guy was digging a trench in our backyard, in the back garden. And he was putting the soil back in, and he had mixed like concrete powder, and he was just putting stuff
Oh
in,
my
and he was
God.
basically filling in a hole, say 6 foot by 2 feet. And he had been doing that the whole night, and he basically filled it up, put the grass back on. And the neighbor swore blind that he had killed and buried his lover, and she didn't see the lover again. The guy had moved out. My mum to this day won't put a swimming pool in the back garden because she doesn't want to dig in the garden because she doesn't know what's down there because of that story.
Oh my
So that is
God.
very unsolved. Unless we literally go dig a massive hole in the back garden and see, we'll never know. But the amount of activity in that house is so bizarre. And the fact that I saw this really trendy guy, like really
Yeah,
trendy,
from
very
that
like
era.
arty kind of vibe, getting ready, like kind of fits the story and the timeline. And I didn't know about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was
I
my
want
really big anomaly experience, apparition.
I would be so interested if like I bet that you could like search and find him as like a missing person or something.
It would be interesting, but in those days, like if you were gay or whatever, like your family would
Hmm.
wipe their hands of you. Like I don't know if people would be looking. I'm just gonna see if I can find the photo that I took of him. Um, yeah, it's crazy, man. Crazy,
Oh
crazy
man.
stuff. Crazy,
Have you
crazy stuff.
have you seen all the TikTok? things about like people doing TikTok dances and then like someone will walk behind them and they swear blind that they're alone in their house.
Oh no, I don't like that.
TikTok is like, and there's so many ones on TikTok, and I don't know, like I assume about 50% are probably fake
Oh
these
yeah,
days, but like some of them you just are like, whoa,
that's him. He had like
that,
kind of jug handle ears, like the hair, the eyes. Um, so that's the full photo, and you can kind of see him just looking. He's got the popped collar. Yeah, it was pretty intense. His eye kind of freaked me out because
yeah,
he's sad, man.
he
That was
does look
not,
a bit sad.
yeah, it was not his choice to go.
No,
Um,
obviously not.
yeah, it's interesting. So, I mean, I
Wow.
got so many weird photos in that house. I used to do a little bit of ITC photography with like boiling water and steam, catching images in steam and
Oh,
water. I caught a photo of a woman that I call the ballerina. And it's such a detailed photo of her that you even see the knuckles on her fingers, her fingernails, and a gold wedding band, and her hair in a
wow.
white dress with a big bow, and she's sort of posing like a ballerina. Um, and then I asked her to show herself again, and she did. I got a second photo in Steam of a perfect ballerina in a tutu with her arms raised. Perfect.
Oh,
I'll send you those pictures because we'll cover that kind of thing when we get to spirit photography. But I'll send them to you now.
wow.
You
Oh,
can
I'm
see
so keen.
them. No one else can see them. Only Elaine. All right, we're gonna have to go. We have actually gone so far over time. Oh God, this
Yeah.
is such a good topic. All right, guys. If you have seen anything freaky or experienced any apparitions or anomalies, please just comment and let us know. It's really cool. We do want to hear your stories. So yeah,
I
get
want
in
to hear
touch.
every story.
I know, it's so
See
good.
ya.
All right, bye,
Bye.
guys.